Yeah, it's so good. Love me some dark chocolate. Peppermint bark. Oh yeah. That makes me thirsty. All right, let's get this started here. Hey, welcome to another flip video with Mr. Volkman. Today's flip video is going to go over a gentleman by the name of Dred Scott and what I am terming as the big decision. Decision. This will cover lesson 21.7. And the Dred Scott and the big decision is going to blow your mind. In fact, it is going to flip the Missouri Compromise, the Compromise of 1850, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and the idea of popular sovereignty on its head. Are you ready for this? If you're wearing socks, put sock suspenders on because they're about to be blown off your feet. Let's talk about what happened before the decision. There was a gentleman by the name of Dred Scott, who unfortunately was a slave, to an army surgeon whose name was John Emerson. Now this army surgeon had held posts in the state of Illinois, went to the territory of Minnesota for several years in the 1830s. Once his time in the territory of Minnesota was up, he returned back to Missouri. When he was back in Missouri, Dred Scott sued for his freedom. He argued that his time on free soil had erased his slave status. By free soil, I mean a state or a territory that has made slavery illegal. When I say sued, I mean he went to court to ask for his freedom. Before it could be decided if Dred Scott was free or not, there were some questions that would have to be answered in the court of law. And what better way to tell you about these questions than in a song?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are proud to present in concert today, Mr. Volkman!
Thank you. Me, la 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 la. There were some questions that had to be answered in court, and one of these questions would be the following. Could slaves be citizens to bring cases to court? Another question that had to be answered was, did living in a free territory or state make slaves? Did make slaves free? That was the second question. Now it's time for the third question to be answered in court. Did Congress have the power to make any laws at all concerning slavery in the territories? I don't know. That's why the court had to answer these questions. And the last question to be answered was the Missouri Compromise a constitutional use of that power? Thank you. You can hold your applause, and I'll be handing out autographs the next time you see me. Now, these questions were really important to answer. With question number 1, could slaves be citizens to bring cases to court? That had to be answered. Because remember, slaves were seen as property in the South, seen as tools to help the slave owners earn money, much like, the cotton gin. So if the cotton gin is unhappy because it's being used too much, could it go to a court of law and complain? Well, the answer to that is no. So could slaves do the same thing? Well, if the answer is no, slaves can't, then of course Dred Scott can't be free. But if the answer is yes, that a slave could bring up problems in a court of law, well, then we can go to the next few questions, such as, did living in a free territory or a free state make a slave free? Well, why would he ask that question? Well, because slavery is illegal in that place. So when he goes to that state or territory, is it like he's taking off the coat of slavery and then it's left off? That's what the court had to figure out. The third question, again, is very important. because it asks, does Congress have the power to make any laws at all concerning slavery in the territories? Now, this is important because the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the Missouri Compromise, and the Compromise of 1850. Because if Congress cannot make laws that concerning slavery in the territories, well, there's a lot of laws that are going to go bye-bye. And lastly, was the Missouri Compromise a constitutional use of this power up here that I'm circling frantically? Because if it's not, again, the Missouri Compromise is gone. The Supreme Court had to deal with all of these questions. The Supreme Court was made up of, was made up of 9 individuals. 4 of those individuals were for the North. So you can tell that they definitely wanted probably Dred Scott to be free. 5 of those individuals were from the South. And the Chief Justice, the guy who was kind of the leader of the Supreme Court, was also from the South. So you could see, and even say, that the writing was on the wall as to whether or not Dred Scott would be labeled a free man finally, or if he would still be a slave. And, you know, because it's sunny outside the day I'm filming this and it's spring, and because I just feel like there's a song in my heart, the next part will also be done in song. Once I go to the next slide.
Again, for your listening pleasure, we'd like to introduce 3-time nominated Mint and M&M award-winning singer, Mr. Volkman!
The voting for Mr. Scott did not go as planned. 7-2 were the votes against him, my man. The decision that was made showed the following: that neither slaves nor free African Americans were citizens, and the reasoning behind this was that the Declaration and the Constitution were not written for African Americans because they were seen as inferior people. The decision also showed that Scott's time of 2 years in Illinois and the Northwest Territories did not make him free. Also, the decision showed that Congress never had the right to prohibit or stop slavery, because this would go against the 5th Amendment that prohibits denying property rights without due process. Also, the decision spelled the end of the Missouri Compromise by making it unconstitutional. Thank you. You're too kind for your applause. I'll be here until Friday when it's the weekend. Whew. The decisions that the Supreme Court made had resounding effects throughout the country. Based upon their decision, the Supreme Court was telling everyone, citizens, slaves, and Congress, that first, the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights were not intended for African Americans. Why? Well, as Mr. Volkman sang so pleasantly, African Americans were seen as inferior people when those documents were written. The Supreme Court also told everyone in the whole country that popular sovereignty, which is the idea that people can choose for themselves what they want, like slavery, that was unconstitutional. Because slaves were property, and when you vote and not allow slavery in a territory or state, you're saying someone can't bring their property into that state. Much like, if we vote to say, hey, we can't let cows in Coopville, or Oak Harbor, or South Whidbey, or Seattle, or Portland, well, that's goofy. That's my property. You can't tell me I can't bring property into a city. How did Northerners feel? Well, They felt that the court now would say that no state could stop slavery, regardless of those people's wishes. And this was the greatest fear that Northerners had. Final thoughts were as following. The court's decision intensified sectional strife. Sectional meaning you have two groups. It made that worse and made them want to punch and hit. It also undercut the possibility of any compromise solutions because of what they decided. Meaning if North and South tried to make compromises, there's no base, no foundation for those compromises anymore. Everything would be seen as unconstitutional or illegal. And finally, and most importantly, it weakened the moral authority of the judiciary and the judicial branch. Because they're saying slavery is okay. And everyone knew that that wasn't moral. At least the Northerners knew that. Well, thank you for watching this 11-minute long flipped video. It was longer because, like I said, it's spring and Mr. Volkman had a song in his heart today. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you need to rewatch certain parts, please do that, and I will understand if there are certain things you missed because the singing was so beautiful you got caught up in the wonderfulness of my singing voice. Hey, and I'll see you in class. Oh, don't forget those Edmodo questions.